What's up, BookTube? Welcome back. My name is Laura if you're new here, and today I'm talking about all the books that I read in March. So, do y'all remember my January wrap-up? That little thing that I said where I was like, I did so much reading in January. I think this was my best reading month that I've had, like, ever, possibly. So there was a reason why I read so much this month and why it'll probably never happen again. I got sick around like the middle of the month or so. I had tonsillitis. I was home for an entire week, so I did a lot of reading. So yeah, this is very much a like one-off. It's never gonna happen again. It's never gonna happen again. Never gonna happen again. Well, I really ate my words on that one because I did actually get sick again and had to have a week and a half off from work, except this time I actually did have COVID. And it fucking sucked. It was so bad. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. It was horrible. But that's besides the point. So we are once again here for a very, very long video because I read a fuck ton this month. I read one less book than January, but I actually read more pages by like a good few hundred, which means that March is quite possibly my best reading month ever. So very exciting. Not a very nice reason to have a great reading month, but I'll take what I can get. So in the month of March, I read 11 books, DNF'd 2, soft DNF on 1, which gave me a grand total of 3,485 pages, which is 400 more pages than I read in January. That is honestly nuts for me. So yeah, we're gonna be here for a really long time, so I'm not gonna ramble too much, and I'm gonna try and make all my reviews pretty quick because I really don't want to film for a million years and have a like 45-minute long video, so I'm gonna do my best here. But we'll start with the DNFs. The first one is only a soft DNF. I am planning on reading this book, but that is The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden. I got to page 26 and I just don't have the focus for it right now. I'm very, very scatterbrained at the moment, but for a very exciting reason. I'm filming this on the 31st. I think y'all are going to be seeing it early next week, so by the time that you see this I will have a cat. I'm adopting a cat tomorrow. Her name is Isabella. She is 14, possibly 15. I haven't even met her yet and I'm already so in love, but because I'm like so excited and also filled with anxiety, because of course I am not able to focus on a like really dense fantasy right now. There is just way too much going on in this book and I would not be able to give it the attention that it needs and deserves right now. I was genuinely trying to and I can't. I could not tell you what happens in this first 26 pages. Literally no clue. So this one will be a later read. And then the other two books that I DNF'd were also within the last few days where I just can't focus right now, but also I didn't like the books either. The first one was Rhapsodic by Thalassa. This one is an adult fantasy romance that has to do with like a bargain and a lot of bargains, and also a budding romance between an immortal being and a 16-year-old, which I am really not about. Don't like that. I don't care that the author specified literally 4 times in the first 40 pages of this book that the legal age to be an adult in their world is 16. Don't really care. I'm not comfortable reading that, so I'm out. And then the other one was Queen Takes King by Jolie Burkhart, which is the second book in their Vampire Queen series. I read the first book a couple of months ago and like, it was fun. It was not a good book. Do not get me wrong. It was a bad book, but it was bad in a really fun way. So I was still planning on carrying on with the series, and then I picked up book 2 and I was immediately like, no, I don't want to read this one. So I've DNF'd that book as well as dropped the series as a whole. I will not be carrying on with that series. Moving on to the books that I did read this month. The first book that I read was Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi. This is the prequel to Pet, which I read I think in February. This one I started in February, but I didn't finish it until March. So I'm counting it for this month, but I don't know what happened with this book, but it just could not hold my attention whatsoever. This book is like 200 and something pages and it took me over a week to read it. I would literally get through about 5 pages and then my mind would just wander and I'd be gone. So I really don't know what happened here because like I liked the characters, the setting was good, the story was interesting. I liked all of the individual elements to it, but just for some reason I could not get into this book and I ended up giving it 3 stars. I do still recommend it. I think it was a really good book. It was just weird timing for me. This is very much a me problem, not a problem with the book. I think I might end up rereading it at some point once I'm like maybe more in the mood for it. I don't know. Because I do think that I could have really enjoyed this book if I read it at a different time, but Who knows? I then read The Old Guard, Tales Through Time by Greg Rucka. This is the first volume in what I'm hoping will be a many volumed spin-off series of The Old Guard. The Old Guard is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm not as much of a fan of the comics, but I do still really enjoy them. And Tales Through Time is an anthology that shows you little snippets of the characters' very long immortal lives. This is like my favorite kind of thing. I love stories about people who are immortal, but I always want to know what they were doing before the story takes place. And this book gave me just that, and it was so much fun, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read A Veil of Stardust and Savagery by Analeigh Ford. This is the second book in the Veiled Realm series. This is a self-published fairy fantasy romance that I found on Kindle Unlimited. It's not a great series, but it's entertaining. Book 1 at least was. Book 2 was not nearly as fun, to be honest. It got like really dry and repetitive. And there was a whole weird thing with like possible incest in there, and like it was odd. Brief synopsis, this series is about a human girl who was cursed by fairies at birth. Near her 21st birthday, the fae come and collect her and bring her to the fairy realm, and she learns that she actually has to be a sacrifice in order to bring magic back to the fairy realm. And so the first book is her and the 4 fairy princes traveling between courts on the way to her death, basically. And while they're traveling, the 5 of them start to fall in love. So it's the starting of a like reverse harem kind of story. Book 2 was not as good as Book 1. It had less whimsy and less humor to it. Like I feel like Book 1 the author wasn't taking it too seriously, whereas Book 2 she was trying to take it more seriously, and that kind of killed the joy in it a little bit. And sadly I gave it 2 stars. These next books I'm just going to talk about together because they're part of the same series. But in March I read Slaying Monsters for the Feeble as well as Hunting Fiends for the Ill-Equipped by Annette Marie. These are books 2 and book 3 in the Guild Codex Demonized series, which I am just so obsessed with. Oh my god, these are amazing. They follow a 20-ish-year-old girl whose parents have just passed away in a car accident, and she's sent off to live with her uncle for the time being while things get settled, and her uncle steals her entire inheritance. So while she's working on getting that back, she finds out that her uncle is hosting a very illegal demon selling ring in the basement. And then she ends up accidentally befriending this demon and creating a soul bond with him, which now makes her an illegal demon contractor. And then things go from there. But I just adore these characters so much. The plot is really good, it's interesting, it's fast paced, but I am 100% just here for the characters and the romance. This is a very slow burn romance between the main character and the demon. I am truly obsessed with this series. I truly adore them, and I want to read the 4th book like right the fuck now, but I also don't want it to be over. And both of these ones I gave 4.5 stars, but book 3 here is my favorite book in the series by far. I might actually bump it up to a 5-star. I haven't quite decided yet, but I'm probably going to do that. Next up, I read Before We Disappear by Shaun David Hutchinson. This one is a queer ahistorical fantasy that takes place at the, what's it called? Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition, I think it's called. Whatever that thing is, which took place in Seattle in 1909. In this one, we follow 2 main characters. The one is the assistant of a magician, and they travel to America to go be part of this exposition. And then the other main character is actually a captive of this really evil, vile man who is using him for his power. He has the power to transport anything at a whim, so like he can like disappear and then reappear across the room if he wants to, and he could like take things with him. So he kidnapped him at the age of 4 and has been using him to like rob banks and commit crimes all over the country. And now his captor wants to pretend to be magicians and secretly use real magic. So these 2 characters meet at the exposition and end up falling in love, and this whole book is mostly just the one character trying to figure out how to free the other one. It was a really fun book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. The characters were fantastic. It was by far the best part of this book, but the plot was pretty slow. It didn't actually start to kick in until like literally halfway through, which considering this book is 500 pages, it was 250 pages of not a whole lot happening. So, but then once things got going, it was really fast paced and interesting, and I had a great time with it. It was just that first half that was like not bad, but not as good as it could have been, and this book definitely could have been a lot shorter, but it was still a good time, and I'm glad that I read it. And also that cover is just so freaking beautiful. Oh my god, it's gorgeous. Next up, I got to read one of my most hyped releases of this year a little bit early because my pre-order ended up coming like a week and a half early, and I was so happy me about it. But that one is So This Is Ever After by F.T. Lukens. This is the author of In Deeper Waters, which I read last year and just completely fell in love with. So I've been looking forward to the next book for so long now, and I'm so happy to have this in my hands. This one is a fantasy that revolves around Arthurian legend, except it's about what happens after the prophecy is complete, and it's also very, very gay. This is one of my favorite kinds of fantasy novels where all kinds of queerness are just accepted. Like, there is no homophobia, there's no transphobia present at all in this world. Pretty much everybody is some kind of queer, and it's so beautiful. Like, this is just one of the gayest books that I've ever read in my life, and it made me so happy. There were some really interesting themes in here as well surrounding PTSD and trauma, and it was a really beautiful story about these two main characters on the cover here who are just pining after each other, but both of them are too afraid to say anything until they're like literally on death's door. It was such a cute read, and I had an amazing time reading it. It was hilarious too and had me laughing out loud the entire time, but then it also had moments of like more seriousness to it that really balanced it out nicely. And just overall, it was such a fantastic read, and I highly recommend it, and this one I gave 4 stars. After that one, I read my arc From Bad to Cursed by Lana Harper, which is a sequel to Payback's a Witch and comes out on May 17th. The series takes place in a wonderfully magical town called Thistle Grove that was founded by 4 families of witches. Throughout the generations, these families have not always gotten along, which is especially the case for the Thorns and the Avermovs. The Thorns practice green magic, so they're all about light and healing, whereas the Avermovs are necromancers. They do death magic, so these two are just naturally enemies, basically. Especially the two main characters of this book, because they have their own personal history as well as just their family stuff. But the two are forced to work together when somebody uses death magic to harm a member of the Thorn family, and they have to try and figure out who it was before more people get hurt. And so the two main characters are told by their leaders that they have to work together to try and figure it out. The two of them hate each other because of their past, but as they spend more time together, they start to very reluctantly admit that they kind of enjoy each other's presence and think that the other is hilarious. And it was just this adorably slow like warming up to each other that eventually leads to romance. This one was such a good time. I liked book 1 a lot, it was really fun, but book 2 was like leagues better. It was so good. It had me laughing so hard. I could not get over how funny this book was. Because these two characters just hate each other so much, anytime that they're in the same room is just a constant like roasting battle. They're just hurling insults at each other, but it's never done with malice at all. Like, even while they're being insulted, each character is trying really hard not to laugh. It was just so funny and such a good book, and I can't wait for this book to come out so that the rest of you guys can read this one and hopefully laugh as hard as I did. But this one I gave 4 stars. After that one, I read All the Feels by Olivia Dade, which is the sequel to Spoiler Alert, and is quite possibly one of my favorite romance books to ever exist. So this one follows the friend of the main character from book 1, who's also an actor on the Game of Thrones type show, but he has really severe ADHD, and as a result he ends up getting into a lot of trouble sometimes. He just can't hold his tongue, and he ends up getting into fights, and so his boss assigns him essentially a babysitter, and the two of them have to spend literally like every waking moment together. They're just so complete opposite. She's very serious and quiet, whereas he is just this like rambly, energetic ray of absolute fucking sunshine, and the two balance each other so perfectly, and they just fall so hopelessly in love with each other, and it was so beautiful. I loved it. The female lead in this one as well is also plus size, and that is a really big part of the story, and I love how it was handled. It was so beautifully done. If anybody ever asked me for a recommendation for a book with good plus size rep in it, this would be the first book that I told them about. It was amazing. I genuinely could not put this down. I started it one evening, I got about maybe 20% of the way through, and then the next evening I spent literally 4 hours laying in bed reading this, and I could not stop. Same as the last one, I liked book 1 a lot. It was really good, but book 2 was just in a totally different game here. It was amazing. It was just incredible, and I would highly recommend this one as well, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Almost to the end here, my second last book that I read in March was Claimed by the Orc Prince by Lionel Hart. Don't laugh at me for this one, I know it's kind of weird, but it was a good time. This one is a self-published fantasy romance that I found on Kindle Unlimited. It blew up on TikTok a little while ago, and it just sounded so ridiculous that I kind of had to read it, and it was actually kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. This one is about a elf prince who is about to be in an arranged marriage with one of the orc princes, and their marriage is going to be the start of a peace treaty between the two nations, which will finally stop the war between them. But the two don't actually meet until they are saying their vows to each other, and then the rest of the book is just them kind of getting to know each other and all the challenges that come with their situation. It was kind of a fun book, actually. I didn't think that I would like it as much as I did, but it was actually kind of enjoyable. It was weird as hell, but like kind of in a good way. And I'm actually planning on carrying on with this series. This one is a trilogy. It was a really quick read too. I think I finished it in like 2 hours or so. And yeah, it was just a fun time. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't like the best thing ever. The writing and especially the dialogue could use a lot of work, but like overall it was a fun time. So yeah, 3 stars for that guy. All right, and then the last book that I read in March was the Ex Hex by Erin Sterling. This one I actually just finished this morning. I picked it up on a whim and I listened to the entire audiobook pretty much in one sitting while I clean my house. So the concept of this one is pretty similar to From Bad to Curse. I'm loving this trend of contemporary romances that have a little bit of a witchy twist to it. So this one is also about a town that was founded by witches, and it follows our main character who's also a witch, and she had a fling with one of the like founding family's sons, which ended in complete heartbreak when at the end of their like whirlwind summer romance, he tells her that he's actually betrothed, and she completely loses it, understandably so, and gets really drunk after they break up and does what she thinks is a fake curse on him. She takes a Bath and Body Works candle and says a whole bunch of like really silly, stupid things that she didn't actually take seriously. She didn't think that she was doing real magic, but then 9 years later when he returned to the town for the first time, it turns out that her curse actually worked, and not only is he cursed, but he has also cursed the entire town by accident. So the two of them have to work together to try and get the curse off of him as well as off of the town before somebody gets hurt. This was just okay. It was really fun and campy and cheesy, but like it was a little bit too cheesy sometimes. I literally cringed through all of the sex scenes. Like I was listening to it and I was just like, oh god, no. Like I have never done that before in a romance book, and this was the first time that I've ever read a romance book where I really wished that there was no steam to it, because like it was just so cringy. It also really didn't help that the audiobook narrator sounded like what's her name? Jennifer Coolidge, I think is her name. Like she had that like kind of nasally tone to her voice, and all I could picture was this actress reading this book, and I was just like, no. Like it was not good. It was just really cringy for the most part. The actual story was fine, the romance was okay. I liked the love interest a whole lot more than the main character, mostly because like the main character is a witch who doesn't really want to be a witch. Like she doesn't care about magic at all, and like she barely ever uses it. So it just felt like, you know, we had this like really cool witchy setting and then nothing came of it. So I wasn't a big fan of that part of it, but again, overall it was fine. It wasn't a bad book, and I do plan on reading the sequel. I think it comes out in September. It just wasn't like my favorite thing to ever exist, but it was okay, so I gave it 3 stars. Alright, so here are just some of the books that I read this month. That was a busy month. Wow. I felt like a reading machine this entire month. It was like non-stop, and I had a really good time with at least most of the books that I read. But down in the comments, let me know what the best thing that you read in March was. I would love to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!